It can be really hard to not care what other people think about you. That's because we are social creatures who have survived as a result of cooperation. That's why it can feel so important to be liked by others and to be accepted by those around you, because we have evolved to understand that a lack of cooperation can make it harder to survive. But what happens when you care too much about what other people think, to the point where it causes you to overthink social situations, overthink what you might have said, and to feel anxious about what other people might think about you? What can you do about that? In this episode, I'll be talking about how to stop caring what other people think of you. This is episode number 111, How to Stop Caring What Other People Think of You. Welcome to Calmly Coping. My name is Tati Garcia, and I am a licensed therapist and coach specializing in high-functioning anxiety. I help high achievers overcome anxiety, stress, and overwhelm so they can feel more calm, balanced, and confident from within. Thank you so much for tuning in. So when does caring what other people think of you move from being helpful to unhelpful? This could happen when it causes anxiety for you. So maybe you are overthinking things, maybe you're avoiding situations because you're worried about people judging or criticizing you. It could potentially result in panic attacks or other physical sensations that go along with anxiety, like difficulty taking a deep breath, numbness in your body, muscle tension. So any of those physical sensations that you might experience as a result of anxiety. And also when you're always assuming that people are negatively judging you. So if you're assuming that the things that people think about you or the opinions that people have about you are always negative, like their judgments or criticism, then this can be when caring what other people think about you becomes unhelpful. Especially when you are assuming that this is what other people think about you and you don't have any evidence to support this. And it might also be unhelpful when you catastrophize the consequence of negative interactions or other people's negative opinions. So I'm going to get fired, or they're going to break up with me, or they're never going to want to be friends with me again. So let's clarify. It's not bad to care about what other people think of you. It can be important because we are social creatures, like I mentioned previously, and empathy is an important part of that. And empathy, as well as sympathy, is recognizing and caring about what other people might be feeling and how they might feel about you, what they might think about you, what their opinions might be. As a result, it's not bad to care about what especially your loved ones or people that are close to you may think of you, because that can help to improve your relationship. When you're in tune to what the people around you may be thinking or feeling, that can be beneficial. However, like I mentioned in these previous instances, sometimes it can get to the point where it's too much and it feels too overwhelming and you're constantly focused on the negative and worrying about what other people think about you and then changing your behavior as a result. Maybe you're avoiding having conversations with people because you're too afraid of what they might think of you, or you're avoiding going to certain types of social interactions because of this, or you're avoiding doing something that might potentially help you move forward in your life or in your career. So when you allow those negative assumptions or the negative things that you hear from other people to have a negative impact on you, to bring up insecurities to avoid, or when it prevents you from really showing up as your true authentic self, this is when it can get in the way. So here's a personal example of this. I used to absolutely hate small talk. And it used to be something that I would actively tell other people, like, I'm no good at small talk. And honestly, sometimes I still do. But, this really was a result of the social anxiety that I was struggling with. And so I felt like I was terrible at conversations, I was uninteresting, and I didn't have anything that would be really exciting for people to hear. And I always found it awkward to end those type of small talk interactions. So as a result, I would avoid putting myself in situations where small talk would happen. Or, let's say if you're checking out at the counter, I would purposely avoid eye contact or look at my phone or do something so that I could feel more comfortable, but also avoid the potential awkward situation, because I was afraid that people might judge me for not being great at having these types of conversations. In reality, I was judging myself first, and then I was assuming that other people thought this about me as a result. And honestly, I still don't know if I was actually being judged by people because I can't read minds. And that's the thing. A lot of the times, the things that we fear other people might think about us, the way we think they might be negatively judging us, a lot of times we are creating those stories in our minds and we're making assumptions. And like I said previously, going straight to the worst case scenario and assuming that people have have negative opinions of you because of the negativity bias that we have on humans, that it is more advantageous to focus on the negative as a way of protecting ourselves. But in this situation, it just makes us feel worse. So what would actually happen in these situations? I felt anxious. I would overthink things. After the fact, I would reflect back on what had happened and think, oh man, why did I say something so stupid? Or I should have said this, or they must think I'm so awkward. And so I had all of this negative internal self-talk, in addition to, in the moment, I might have felt just physically uncomfortable. My heart rate got faster. I started to feel clammy and shaky. And sometimes I was nervous that my voice would be shaky as a result. So does this sound like you? Does this sound familiar at all? Do you overthink social situations, harp on what you said, what you could have said, and worry about what people might be judging you for, similar to the situation that I just explained, or whether it is something else entirely different, whether it is something you're assuming or something you've actually heard? If this sounds like you, then after this sponsor, I'm going to be sharing what you can do in order to work towards stop caring what other people think of you. So this episode is sponsored by the Calm and Ambitious community, which is my exclusive community for high achievers struggling with high functioning anxiety. This community is for high achievers who want to learn how to feel calmer from within, improve their work-life balance, and elevate their self-worth so they can feel more confident and stop struggling with overthinking, whether it comes to social situations, what people are judging you for, or anything else that you might feel insecure or doubt yourself for. The way that this works is that you will receive a monthly training each month that is geared towards high achievers with high functioning anxiety. And we also have a supportive private community along with live monthly calls to help support you towards working towards your goals. If you're interested in learning more and joining us, you can go to calmandambitious.com and also check out the link in the description. So I had some conversations with people before recording this episode because I noticed this is something that a lot of my listeners and clients and students can relate to. One person said, quote, "But the feeling of everyone watching and judging you is just a terrible feeling to live with," unquote. I can definitely understand that. It feels really uncomfortable to be in a situation and to think that everybody is just watching you and judging you and making negative assumptions about your behavior or who you are and all of these other aspects about you. But the reality is that although you might feel that way, and I can relate because I used to feel this way, most people aren't focusing on you. Most people are actually doing the same thing with themselves, maybe to differing degrees, and not everybody is as self-conscious, but most people are focusing more on themselves and how they might appear to other people rather than overanalyzing the way that you are coming across to them. So I'm going to share 5 specific tips / mindset shifts that you might find helpful in this journey towards stopping caring what other people think of you. Now, keep in mind, like I mentioned before, you don't want to work towards a point of completely never caring what people think, but it's more getting to a point where you're not constantly thinking about it, worrying about it, and obsessing about and assuming the negative about what other people think of you. So tip number 1 is to challenge your thoughts. So challenge those judgments that might be coming up. Are you making assumptions? Are you assuming the worst? Is everyone really watching you as closely as they are? A lot of times when you can bring these thoughts to the surface and really question them, they're not 100% accurate, if at all. So maybe you are making assumptions about what other people think because there's no evidence to support it. Or maybe you are assuming the worst and going to the worst case scenario, even though that might be unlikely. So really recognizing and then challenging those judgments and those things that you assume other people are judging you for, because oftentimes it can just be a reflection of things that you might have heard in the past or ways that you're judging yourself. Tip number 2 is to focus on your strengths. So I'm sure that you have people in your life who support you and who like you for who you are as a person. So I'm sure you have many positive traits as a result. Maybe you are loyal, maybe you are honest, maybe you're trustworthy, maybe you're kind. Maybe you have all of these strengths that you're forgetting when you get into these situations where you're starting to worry whether people are judging you or what they think of you. And so sometimes just bringing those things back to mind and remembering like, oh, I'm not this terrible, unlikable person. I do have a lot of positive qualities, and maybe I'm not extremely sociable like this person or extremely intelligent or well-spoken like this person, and that's okay. Tip number 3 is to focus on what you can control. So unfortunately, we can't control what other people think of us, how they might be feeling about us, or what they might say to you, and that's okay. That's when it's important to focus on what you can control, which is yourself, the way you communicate and the way that you come across and show up for people, and the decisions that you make as well. It's not to get to the point of putting tons of pressure on yourself to do perfectly and like every situation is a performance. It's more of recognizing and letting go of, well, I can't control what this person thinks of me, and I might not even know what they think of me, and that's okay. Tip number 4 is to practice self-compassion. And this is just speaking to yourself like you would to a friend. So have grace for yourself during the moments where you said something that you might have regretted, or maybe you didn't say something that you wish you had said. I know this can happen a lot where you, in the moment, like maybe didn't know 100% what to say, but then afterwards you're like, oh man, I should have said that. Or if it's another type of situation and maybe you feel bad making a decision or letting somebody down or saying no to them, have grace for yourself and recognize that you can't make everybody happy all of the time, and that's okay. And practice that self-compassion act of speaking to yourself like you would to a friend. And tip number 5 is to make self-acceptance a priority. When you can fully accept yourself, then worrying about people's judgments, criticisms, and negative reactions becomes less important. So rather than looking for validation and acceptance externally, which is always going to fluctuate and you may never really know, it's all about accepting yourself from within. And when that can be the priority, of course, while still being respectful towards others and not completely diminishing other people's feelings, but when that can be the priority, you can get to the point where you're not sacrificing your own needs in order to keep the peace or to make everybody else happy, but to where you can fulfill your own needs and focus on making yourself happy and caring for yourself from within and building yourself up from within. And then that tends to radiate outwards towards your other relationships. So your action tip is to take these tips that I shared with you, practice these mindset shifts, and focus on the ones that resonated with you and put them into action. So especially the ones where it comes to a mindset shift, it can help to write down a reminder for yourself or keep it somewhere that you can see. Like, for example, I like to write Post-it notes and keep them on my desk when it comes to the current thing that I'm working on. And so maybe yours might be focus on what I can control, or maybe it might be practice self-compassion or focus on self-acceptance, whatever that might be for you. Those can be great visual reminders for perspective shifts. And then at the same time, it can also help to take action and take steps outside of your comfort zone, because taking action is what leads to increased confidence. So if you're avoiding certain situations or avoiding conversations because you feel uncomfortable or because you're afraid of what other people might think, practice taking baby steps towards facing those situations, because ultimately you will feel more confident as a result, even if it feels scary, especially in the beginning. So let's continue the conversation. I'd love for you to head over to my free Facebook community, Calmly Coping, for high achievers with high functioning anxiety. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about this episode. Do you struggle with worrying about what other people think of you? And after hearing this episode, which tips resonated with you and what are you going to do to cope with that moving forward? You can join us at calmlycoping.com/group. And while you wait for next week's episode, I have other episodes about decreasing anxiety, adopting a healthy mindset, and managing your time and energy. So be sure to check out these episodes here. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And until next time, be calm.